A bit like me, Ambassador Ambition is old, built last century. Unlike me, it's been passed around like the manager's job at Man U since Fergie left. It's as big as a fun-sized Mars bar, and it costs about the same. But is it a rough diamond, or just plain old rough? I took 3 short cruises over 6 nights to find out. Here, ladies and gentlemen, we go. Oh, there it is. It's always exciting when you first spot the ship, even if it's smaller than the car that you drove to port in, and especially when it boards right next to a windmill. I blinking love windmills, don't I? I boarded at London International Cruise Terminal. Now I know what you're thinking. I didn't know there was a cruise port in London. Well, there isn't. This is London, like Le Havre is the gateway to Paris. I parked with Just Park at the local Asda. It was dirt cheap, and my car was still there when I got back, so I'll do it again. But, even though it's only about a mile away, it's a pretty grim walk with a busy road on your left and an industrial estate on your right. Just get an Uber. Security and check-in was fast, and once on the other side, the gangway is ludicrously short. Like, they could literally use a plank of wood. Although, I suppose, people don't generally like walking the plank. I'm still having therapy from the Embarkation buffet experience last month on Ventura. But the dude meeting and greeting said, walk down there to the end and go up to 11 for lunch, in a way that made it seem more like an order than an option. I'm pretty beefy just now, so I avoided the beef and I had a salad and a sandwich. As a reward for eating healthy, I also had seconds. Fruit, chocolate eclair, and red Leicester, because, cruise ship buffet. And I'm happy to say that there were no napkin throwing incidents. I power slammed a couple of black coffees and headed out to explore the ship. About 2.5 minutes later, I'd seen everything that Ambition has to offer. This is not a big ship. If you are one of those people that wrongly thinks Arcadia doesn't have an atrium, look away now. This is what I'm calling Ambition's atrium. Customer services is on deck 5, there's a bar above on deck 6, and take care. I told you Ambition was small. To give you an idea how small, when I worked on Aurora in 2007, the other shoppies made fun of Hugh because he accepted a transfer to Artemis, and that was about the size of a dinghy. Ships have been getting bigger and bigger and bigger in the 19 years since. Ambition's about the same size as Artemis was back then, and I suppose now it's not even big enough to be called a dinghy. A lilo, maybe? Whatever, shoppies are young, and young people are stupid. You definitely won't get lost on here, but it's big enough. Ambition is very much a Best Western hotel on water. It's obviously been quite grand in its day, but that day was quite a long time ago, and now it's old and creaky, a bit make do and mend, and fully leaning into the 3-star vibe. As I headed down the corridor to find my cabin, I regretted not packing a Petzl head torch in my hand luggage. Ambassador don't waste money on frivolous luxuries like lights, and the route was a bit dim. It turns out that most of the corridors do actually have lights, just not mine. I spotted this warning en route, but I didn't think the cabin was that odd at all. Make a coffee and sit down. Cabin tour is about to begin. Sleep here, watch this if you're bored, sit here to put your mascara on, hang your clean clothes here, put dirty socks and pants in there. This is where you can shower. That is where you can poop. Cabin tour over. I double checked my booking, and I had asked for a double, but I didn't care enough to bother asking for it to be changed. My cabin steward was super friendly, and I have got no doubt that he'd have whipped him around in no time at all, no problem. But, as always, I told him not to bother with my cabin and just have a sit down when the time comes to make my bed. There were drop-down beds above, and I can't tell you how many times I banged my head on this. because I'm an adult and I didn't. Neither will you, despite what some reviewers I've seen might tell you. The ship does vibrate a bit, and these things rattle all night, but I don't really sleep anyway. It would be a bit snug in here with 4 people, but it was fine for just me, or, even me and a friend, if I had one. Cabin, 6 out of 10. At 3:30, it was time for the muster drill. Not watch a video in the cabin and check in at the muster station. I mean, everyone outside onto the shamefully small bit of prom deck, line up in rows under the lifeboat that you'll get into if we hit an iceberg, and shuffle ever closer and closer to each other, whilst a stroppy crew member shouts at us all. Ah, just like the good old days. I did get my preference of first sitting, large shared table. The early dinner really is early. 5:45. There are 2 main dining rooms. This one is called Buckingham. It's bright, it's airy, and the staff are great. And the food is coming up in a separate dining review. You'll be able to eat enough to survive, and probably enough to put on a few cruise pounds. If you've got any dietary requirements, towards the end of the meal, they'll bring you the following day's menu, so you can pre-order adapted versions. One of my table mates had a serious allergy to shellfish, which made me pretty determined to order double or triple. I'll tell you about them in the dining review too. At breakfast, you can avoid the buffet and drop in here for a buffet. And at lunch, there's a modest selection that you don't have to queue up for. The other MDR is Holyrood. Smaller, fancier looking, and only open for dinner. The buffet is less Saving Private Ryan than most ships. The borough market is small, but there's only 1,200 guests. And because I'm a cool guy, I counted the seats. There are 372. It's got all the usual stuff dotted around the stations at breakfast, lunch and dinner time, and quality-wise, well, it's in keeping with the Best Western theme. But, in a move as shocking as the aeroplane crash on Emmerdale Farm, and if you don't get that reference, then you are too young for this ship, they don't have late night snacks here. Ba, ba, ba. If you sit on the bench seats, then the plastic leaves will get you, and if you don't stay switched on when you're going up for another sausage, then you might walk into one of these bizarrely placed decorative trees. Straight outside the buffet is what you'd expect to be the poolside grill. Cleverly, they have named it the Alfresco Grill, because where you think you're going to see a pool, there's a Star Trek prisoner holding cell. There's pizza and fries, but no burgers or hot dogs. Another shocker. But there is a bit of salad, some hot bits and bobs, and another coffee machine. You know what to expect. That is your lot as far as included dining, and overall I'd say it's stronger than a 6, but not quite a 7 out of 10. I'll cover the speciality dining venues, Saffron for Indian and Lupino's for sort of Italian in the full dining review. The Palladium Theatre is old school. There are a couple of pillars which do get in the way, but only if you sit in one of about a dozen seats, so don't sit there. There are alternative rows of bench seats and chairs, with tables for your flaming sambuca and waiters for bar service before the show. The stage is massive, the sound is a bit meek, and the shows are traditional. I'll deep dive them another time, but briefly, I saw a Nashville show, a musical show, Kyle Tomlinson, Cirque du Luminaire on the Christmas party night, which was an old folk pleasing banger, and it included one of my very favourite things in the universe, which made the dancer that I'd hated up to that point my new favourite. Next was Destination USA, where I made friends with some morons who would not shut up. The stroppy muster drill man thanked me for kicking them out, because they weren't listening to him. And finally, the musical show again. The Cavern is the cabaret bar. Beatles themed, apparently, but they must have had Rent-A-Kill in because, name aside, there are no Beatles of any kind to be found in here. What you will find is trivia, silent discos, noisy discos, a bit of less polished singing and dancing. No karaoke in my time on board, which didn't bother me because I can't sing. Well, like most people who do karaoke. But I was a bit surprised that such a staple old school activity was missing, given the ship's general vibe and audience. They do some faux TV game shows which were popular, and it's probably the busiest venue on board. Leave the theatre on deck 5 and you'll be spat out into the Purple Turtle. It's got the colours and atmosphere of a Premier Inn wine bar. Thankfully, they've priced Lenny Henry out. They advertise its opening hours, but that seems to be some kind of HMRC swizz. It is never open. As far as I can tell, it's mainly used to bash out the drinks served to the wee tables in the theatre. If they did ever open it, it would be a weird atmosphere. It's a narrow horseshoe-shaped corridor. This is also the wildly inappropriate venue for the Friends of Bill meetings. Exit the theatre upon 6 and you'll be in the Angel Bar, the Atrium Bar. Another horseshoe-shaped venue, but this time open plan and overlooking the reception. It's as nice a place as anywhere to sit and knock back a few purple aftershocks. It's the equivalent of the quiet carriage on a train. There's no music, no disco lights, no fun. Obviously, my favourite of all the bars on board. For me, a 10 out of 10. But for normal people, you'll probably give it a swerve, 4 out of 10. Pendennis is the piano bar / disco on deck 5. It looks pretty rubbish in pictures and video because there's pillars everywhere. When you're actually in here, it works quite nicely and it just feels like lots of little sections. And that disguises the fact that you just sat outside the shops. During the day, it's sort of a coffee shop. They serve law coffee, so even if the buffet coffee was horrible, it would still be better. The buffet coffee is fine, by the way. Oh yeah, for the first 3 days, coffee was £2.75. And then it went up to £3.30. Little rascals. Late afternoon and evening, it's a piano bar. Callum from Dudley was the pianist, a pleasant dude who broke up the songs with intentionally cheesy jokes. Then when it gets late, there's a DJ, and when it gets later again, there's a Spotify playlist. 7 out of 10. The Clifton Lounge is the slightly more artsy alternative bar. I suppose this is the cultural quarter. It's wedged between the craft area on one side and the library on the other. And there's a baby grand up here too. Presumably, Ambassador stumbled upon a job lot of cheap pianos that had fallen off the back of a lorry. There was a violinist in here, I'd say at least 22 hours a day. It got to the point of being comical. Whenever I would pass through, no matter what time of day or night, there he'd be, furiously waggling his bow like an angry Robin Hood. On the rare occasion that he nips for a comfort break, and someone else can get up on the wee stage, they also do the odd sort of micro play up here. 7 out of 10. The pool bar was open, which was mental. It was December in the North Sea and there is no pool. 0 out of 10. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, no loungers, no water in the pools, December in the North Sea. I bet the hot tubs were empty too. Well, British people, innit? Whilst we're in the 0 out of 10 territory, just look at these bathrooms. Fine in a motorway services, but this is a cruise ship. The Consulate Bar is appropriately named. This is basically the smokers' very own little bar. Out here they can play and run and dig to their heart's content. Aww, good for them. Tucked away in the corner is a ping pong table, a football table, and a dartboard, but no darts. And why wouldn't they keep 3 spare rolls of AstroTurf here? Directly above the pool area is this equally sarcastic running track. It's a running track in the same way that tofu is food. Still, I was glad it existed, as this very short bit of deck is the closest you'll get to a prom deck, and strolling laps up top was preferable to marching back and forth on the actual prom deck like a madman, which I did also do. There's a little sun deck up here, thankfully with a handy sign reminding people not to drag loungers into the athletics arena, and a chessboard with no pieces. I assume this closed bit is where a kids area and paddling pool was. There's another closed bit at the back where something or other is being tarted up. There's no sports courts anywhere to be seen, so you'll have to hit the gym. At this point, I would like to say I owe Ventura an apology. This gym is worse. Not by much, and it's plenty good enough to close your rings. And it's Life Fitness, not Techno Gym. Anyway, 5 out of 10. The shops are mad. The usual tat, but with a temporary pop-up shop kind of feel. The usual duty-free that's no cheaper than Tesco, inch of gold, and sweets that are more expensive than a cinema in Dubai. 3 out of 10. There's a photographer milling around the main dining room at dinner time. I don't know why. This photo gallery is massive, but they've clocked that people don't buy paper photos in cardboard frames anymore, so nobody is ever there trying to flog anything. Casino? No. Art gallery? No. Cinema, arcade, enrichment talks? No, no, no. Anything at all to do during the day? No. I'm exaggerating. On the final day, there was rolling a ball in a hole in a stairwell. And it was surprisingly well attended. Because of the low prices, I feel like a lot of first-timers would choose an ambassadorship as a low-cost way to give it a go. But it's definitely not for new cruisers. This ship is for people who have cruised before. They know that they already like smaller ships and the quiet life, traditional cruising. Alright, you're going to make me say it. Old-fashioned. The money. In total, I was on board for 6 nights. Solo in 3 different, but same, standard inside cabins, for £909.15. I parked at the nearby Asda via Just Park for £29.49, and I spent £65.99 on internet. Speciality dining was £44.90, and my coffee bill came to £27.75. Gratuities totaled £35, which gives us a total £1,112.28, or £185.38 per night, making Ambassador the cheapest ship this year, at just over half the price of my Arcadia trip, which didn't include any speciality dining. Listen, you get what you pay for. With Ambassador, you pay for next to nothing, and you get next to nothing. If you want water slides, roller coasters, roulette, swimming pools with water in, or to pee in a bathroom from the modern era, this is not the ship for you. I didn't see any pineapples on this trip, but a lot of the guests did look like they had been swung pretty aggressively. If you want to be fed 3 times a day, read or write a book, stare at the sea a lot and see a show before bedtime, give it a go. Ambition is for people who find Fred or Saga a bit too raucous. But, I really liked it. 6 nights on Ambition. Done.